Hello and welcome to Viewpoint. Today on the programme we're discussing relations between Washington and Kiev, namely what have been the successes and failures of the Obama administration's foreign policy efforts in Ukraine, what has been done and what more could have been done, and with the US elections approaching, what does the future hold? Joining us now is Alexander Hara, Director of the Department of Multilateral Relations at the NGO Maidan of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Hara, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you for inviting.
So since the Euromaidan revolution, the US has put a lot of effort into Ukraine, not just with military aid, but diplomatic support as well. So in your view, what have been the successes and failures of this administration's efforts?
Certainly, being a country under the Russian aggression, we would wish to see more support of the United States, and then especially in hard power, I mean the lethal weapon and other stuff, to stop the aggression, to stop the Russians from advancing into our territory. Certainly, we would like to see more diplomatic efforts to stop Russia of getting once again influence over Ukraine. But from the other hand, if we have a look at the situation from the realistic politics, the United States has done a pretty good job on the Ukrainian affair. And not just, we should talk not just about Ukraine itself, but we should talk about the European neighbors, and especially the eastern ones. The United States is trying to secure those members of the NATO that are not happy with aggressive politics of Russia, and especially the Baltics and Poland and Bulgaria and Romania. They are trying to put their boots, I would say this, on the ground. They're trying to prop up their military to establish new centers to coordinate the efforts of NATO in case of Russia aggression. And if you're talking about Ukraine, the Americans are trying to build the institutions, and our institutional ability to withstand not just aggression, military aggression, but different types of aggression from Russia to create a really sovereign Ukrainian state.
But in Ukraine now, there's sort of time is running out almost, and the patience is running out in Washington with Ukrainian politicians. There's still a lot of corruption. Although some reforms have been made, this graft is still consistent. So in your view, how much more patience do you think Washington has with the authorities in Kiev?
Well, I would say that there is a lack of trust, first and foremost from Ukrainian general public to the Ukrainian authorities, and to name the president and the prime minister as well. And this lack of trust is translated into our American and European partners, because it's not a secret. And some diplomats who are visiting Kiev, they are meeting with representatives on NGO in the first place, and then with the representatives
to get the true view of what's going on. Yeah.
And that's why there is a correlation between the mistrust to the authorities from the general public of Ukraine and American and European partners. And how to mend it? First and foremost, to be frank with its own people, with the nation. Secondly, we understand that corruption is not just a matter of getting much better economic shape. Corruption is a main foreign policy tool of Russia, and Russia has been creating oligarchs and trying to influence not just in Ukraine but in different countries, including the Western European countries, via corruption. That's why if we are not are to root out this evil, it means that we will be still in the sphere of influence of Russia.
So you think that Russia is actually influencing the corruption that's happening in Ukrainian business today?
Yeah, sure.
To what extent?
Because we still have oligarchs in place, and it's impossible to get all these fortunes that our oligarchs made, especially in oil and gas sphere, without blessing of Vladimir Putin. Because energy is not just tools of getting a lot of money. It's the weapon of the Russian Federation against Ukraine and other states.
And some people have the view that America, though, didn't do enough to begin with. When the war broke out in April 2014, there was suggestions to send lethal weapons to Ukrainian troops. It wasn't done. There was a lot of diplomatic talk, but nothing was actually realized. And now we have this frozen conflict, which potentially could have been avoided. So why don't you think the Obama administration why didn't they send these lethal weapons?
First and foremost, the Obama administration is so cautious, and they were not going to create a problem with Russian Federation, because Russia, even though Obama considers Russia as a regional power, not a global one, there is a need to engage Russia in a lot of talks on Northern Korean program, nuclear program, Iranian program, and other spheres where the hard security issues is so important for the United States. And that's why they wanted to engage Russia in solving the crisis. From the beginning, the intelligence got information that Russians were on the place, and they were behind the scene in Crimea and then in Donbass. But they are trying to engage to solve the issue peacefully, with no tension, with no rising tension, simply because Russia is a nuclear power. Russia is a member of the permanent member of the US Security Council, and that's why the United States needed Russia as a partner.
So do you think that when Washington condemns the annexation of Crimea, it's just talk?
No, there were sanctions imposed on Russia with regard to the annexation, illegal annexation of Crimea.
But it didn't really affect them then, though. There's still Russian troops in eastern Ukraine.
No, it was step by step. They were trying to show to amount the pressure on Kremlin to step back. And unfortunately, so far, it was not so successful. We see that the huge damage has been done to Russian economy. Their reserve funds are diminishing. But from the other hand, Russians are behaving a bit irrational. For example, if we are talking about the United States, for the time Obama is in office, his approval rating dropped from 70 to 50%.
Which is normal for a president.
Which is normal. Time. Even though that some 60% of the general population are happy with their standard of living. In Russia, it's vice versa. People are getting poorer and poorer, and they are not happy with what is in their fridges. But approval rating of Putin is 85%. So he's trying to use this propaganda just to shift the focus from the domestic problems and to show that there is another way, the way of greatness, the way of Russia getting back to the big round table of the great powers.
Yeah, and although these approval ratings are a bit skeptical, I mean, you said 85%. But in this sort of regime, a lot of people would say yes, although actually in their minds they're thinking no. But with the economic crisis now in Russia, do you think the US could use that to their advantage? I mean, we have oil that's hovering around $30 a barrel.
Well, certainly there is the portion of the American hand, I would say, in the drop of oil prices. But it's not the primary goal to downshift the Russian Federation and to push them. They are trying to engage in communication, and that's why State Secretary is visiting Moscow and talking to his counterparts, and including Vladimir Putin. They're trying to engage. They are not going to destroy the Russian Federation. Let's have a look at the history. When there was an age of collapse of the Soviet Union, George W. Bush Sr. was here in Kiev, and he was trying to discourage Ukrainians from getting independence. Because from the security point of view, it's much better to have a deal or to have communication with one guy with a nuclear button rather than with a lot of guys with nuclear.
Yeah.
That's why the United States are not interested in the dissolution of the Russian Federation. They are not interested in getting them into the brink of collapse.
Okay, well, that's very interesting. Thank you very much for coming on to Viewpoint and hearing your views about the Ukraine and US relations.
Thank you for having me.
That was Alexander Hara. He's the Director of the Department of Multilateral Relations at the NGO Maidan of Foreign Affairs. We've been talking about Ukrainian-US relations. Now, back to the news.